Charles Raine is a well-known British terrorist who is responsible for several bombing and assassination plots as well as other cruel acts. He attempted to assassinate a governor, but despite his lengthy rap sheet, he has never been apprehended. This is because Charles is skilled at escaping from custody and uses his influence and cunning to stay one step ahead of the law enforcement. The opening scene shows Charles in a surgical room, surrounded by several physicians. It is revealed that Charles is undergoing a procedure to alter his facial features, the 10th time he has undergone such a procedure. When the lead doctor asks if he would like some anesthesia to dull the pain, Charles declines, stating that he enjoys experiencing pain. Charles insists on being fully awake during the surgery. At the same time, a group of police officers have gathered outside the building after receiving a tip about his location. They plan to storm the surgical room and capture him. Before beginning their mission, the lead police officer cautions everyone that Charles is a deadly assassin who can take out multiple people on his own. The officers proceed cautiously towards the 13th floor where the surgery is being performed. Unfortunately for them, Charles is well prepared. As soon as the police officers enter the room, he kills the lead doctor and expertly avoids the hail of bullets before fleeing down the hallway. Charles shatters a glass window and jumps out of the building, but he lands gracefully, seemingly unscathed after free-falling from the 13th floor. He runs at top speed, as if jumping from high buildings is a special talent of his. Nevertheless, the police officers, with their cars, eventually trap him, despite his speed. In this manner, the infamous Charles Raine is finally caught after eluding authorities for 15 years. The scene then shifts to an airplane where a lovely flight attendant named Martha is tending to the passengers one by one. Everything seems to be going well until a suspicious-looking man draws a gun and takes her captive. He threatens to kill her if his demands are not met. Martha nonchalantly kicks the assailant in the leg, allowing a nearby passenger to disarm him. Following this, everyone breaks into applause and it is finally revealed that the entire situation was just a simulated training session for the flight attendants to practice self-defense. The suspicious-looking man, who turned out to be John Cutter, is a decorated soldier and retired Secret Service agent renowned for his tough approach to high-stakes crimes. After a while, the general manager of Atlantic International Airlines, the cunning Del Vecchio, arrives and escorts John away. The two appear to have a close friendship. Sly implores John to return to the field and serve the nation once again, but John declines, stating that he no longer wants to put his life on the line for others. Nevertheless, Sly offers John a position as the head of the counter-terrorism unit at Atlantic International Airlines. After some contemplation, John ultimately agrees to the offer when he learns that he will only be required to work twice a month. At another location, Charles is brought to his cell where his lawyer is waiting. The attorney informs Charles that the authorities plan to transfer him to California and execute him in the electric chair. The only way to prevent this outcome is if Charles pleads insanity. Unfortunately, the notorious terrorist reacts with anger and violently shoves the lawyer against a table, rejecting the proposal. In the following sequence, John is depicted without a shirt, engaging in meditation and reflecting on his memories. The film then takes us back in time a few years to when John and his now-deceased spouse were shopping at a corner store. In an unfortunate turn of events, a thief enters the store and tries to rob the cashier. Being a person of strong moral character, John tries to intervene. However, the robber grabs John's wife as a hostage. All of the store's customers retreat, but the thief shoots John's wife anyway. John ultimately takes down the robber, but upon returning to his wife, he discovers that she has passed away. The traumatic experience caused John to resign from his job as a special agent and withdraw from society for several months. However, in the present day, John prepares for his first day back on the job. John must maintain his anonymity while guarding a large Lockheed airline with approximately 200 passengers aboard. He is assigned to seat 57, which is the source of the movie's title. Interestingly, Charles and two FBI agents also board the flight, which is destined for California. The flight crew includes a flight attendant named Martha and a beautiful young woman named Sabrina. As this unfolds, a young boy spots Charles and pretends to shoot him with an imaginary gun. In response, the ruthless assassin feigns death. However, when he retaliates by pretending to shoot the boy, the cuffs on his wrist are revealed, causing concern among nearby passengers. They begin to question the safety of the flight, but Sabrina reassures them that there is no cause for alarm. Later, Sabrina calls over a suspicious-looking member of the staff in the lower deck and requests a special service. The staff obliges and places a metal briefcase on a waiting tray. Around the same time, John, who is frustrated by his talkative seatmate, stands up and goes to the restroom for some solitude. Once John locks the door, Sabrina retrieves the contents of the metal briefcase and discovers that it is a gun. She then heads towards the two unsuspecting FBI agents and kills them with shots to the head, much to the shock of everyone on board. After Charles frees himself from his handcuffs, three of his accomplices stand up from their seats and threaten the passengers to stay quiet. It is revealed that Charles had meticulously planned everything. Upon learning that the agents were escorting him on a commercial airline, he swiftly hired individuals to hijack the flight. In the following scene, Charles goes to the cockpit and shoots one of the pilots to demonstrate his control. the hijacker broadcasts an announcement over the radio that the plane is now being diverted and officially taken over. He promises that the passengers will be safe as long as they remain calm and comply with his demands. John, who is still in the restroom, overhears this and becomes frightened. He finds a way to use the plane's onboard phone and urgently informs his friend Sly of the situation. Subsequently, John expertly overpowers one of the hijackers and seizes his weapon, using him as a shield in a face-off with Charles. Charles also holds Martha hostage, creating a tense standoff between the two. However, Charles suddenly releases the flight attendant and shoots an innocent person to drive his point home. He then aims at John and pulls the trigger, but the shot mistakenly kills one of his own men. Capitalizing on the chaos, John and Martha escape and ride the elevator down to the cargo hold. There, they encounter the suspicious individual they saw earlier and ask if he has any information about the hijackers. The man feigns surprise, but at a crucial moment, he brandishes a knife and tries to attack John. The two engage in a fierce fight, and in the end, John overpowers the villain with a powerful kick. After securing the man, John and Martha head to the avionics section of the plane, where John suggests that they release all the fuel and initiate an emergency landing. Martha strongly objects to the idea, as it could lead to a catastrophic crash. However, after John explains that it is their only option, she agrees to let him proceed. After the fuel is nearly depleted, the two make their way to the landing gear, as it is the safest place to evacuate the plane with minimal injuries. Fortunately, their plan is successful, and when Charles realizes that they are running low on fuel, he orders the pilots to make an emergency landing at the nearest airport. Meanwhile, Sly and his superiors at the Atlantic International headquarters discovered that the hijacked plane was on its way to landing at a small airstrip in Lake Lucille, Louisiana. Without delay, Sly boarded a helicopter and raced to the scene. Meanwhile, John and Martha were poised and ready to jump from the plane as soon as it touched down. A few moments later, the plane finally landed. However, as John and Martha were about to jump, one of the hijackers attacked them from behind. John was thrown out of the plane while Martha was taken captive once again. Two police officers arrived on the scene and promptly arrested John, despite his pleas that he was the head of security on the plane. As John was being escorted away, Charles made contact with the control tower and spoke with the chief sheriff, Mr. Biggs. He immediately made his demands clear, stating that the plane must be refueled within 10 minutes. In exchange, he promised to release 100 passengers. When the sheriff rejected the offer, Charles took the life of 5 passengers to make a statement. The violence inflicted by Charles frightened Mr. Biggs, and he ultimately agreed to refuel the plane. Later, John was brought to the control tower, and even Mr. Biggs suspected that he was one of the perpetrators. His doubts were confirmed when Charles made another call and cunningly lied that John was one of his accomplices who had escaped after betraying him. Upon hearing Charles's false accusation, Mr. Biggs ordered his officers to detain John in the basement. However, John impressively overpowered the officers, secured a police motorcycle, and raced to the airstrip. Meanwhile, after the plane was refueled, Charles followed through on his promise to release 100 passengers. Taking advantage of the chaos, he also snuck out with a shady-looking individual and another man. The 3 individuals headed towards a nearby fair. At the control tower, the FBI finally arrived and requested a comprehensive report from Mr. Biggs about the situation. Upon hearing that John Cutter had been apprehended and physically restrained, the head FBI agent became angry and finally disclosed that John was one of their own. Meanwhile, at the carnival fair, Charles and his accomplices were being discreetly followed by John, who was still determined to catch them. Unfortunately, his disguise was uncovered, and one of the hijackers attempted to shoot him. The shot missed John and hit an innocent bystander, causing a full-blown panic. John climbed up a Ferris wheel, and one of the hijackers pursued him there. The two engaged in a brief struggle, which culminated in the hijacker being thrown off the Ferris wheel, resulting in his immediate death. Following this, John sprang onto Charles, overpowered him, and held him captive until the FBI and local officers arrived to take him into custody. Sly Delvexio also arrived and congratulated John for his successful handling of the terrorist. However, they were unaware that their troubles were far from over. Charles threatened the officers, warning them that if he wasn't released, his accomplices on the plane would begin killing the passengers one by one. John, incensed, tried to negotiate with the terrorists, but to no avail. With no other options available, the FBI and other officials made the difficult decision to allow Charles back onto the plane. However, they had a plan in place. They deployed snipers on top of a nearby building, and as soon as Charles and the other hijackers came into view, they would take them out with deadly shots. In the subsequent scene, 2 FBI agents escorted Charles to the plane, but just as they were about to board, the snipers began firing at them. It was revealed that the previously mentioned suspicious individual had killed the original snipers and was now indiscriminately shooting all the FBI agents. A gunfight then broke out between the hijackers and the agents, leading to multiple casualties, including the suspicious individual. The plane began to take off, but John was not ready to give up. Along with Sly, he hopped into Mr. Biggs's car and asked the sheriff to chase the plane. Their plan was to grasp hold of the retractable landing gear and enter the plane through it. Despite the perilous nature of the stunt, John executed it with ease. He securely hung onto the landing gear and entered the plane. In the cargo hold, he eliminated one of the hijackers. Then he stealthily approached Sabrina and took her out. Now, only the notorious Charles remained as the final hijacker. Before confronting Charles, John makes his way to the cockpit and instructs the passengers to turn the plane back towards Lake Lucio airstrip. The final showdown between John and Charles is intense, and both men prove to be equally matched in fighting abilities. However, during their struggle, a stray bullet shatters one of the plane's windows, causing a loss of air pressure. After finally overcoming Charles, John rushes to save Martha, who is dangling from the broken main door. He pulls her to safety, putting an end to the chaos on board the plane. The passengers break out in celebration, dancing to their heart's content. The dangerous situation has finally come to a close, and everyone can breathe a sigh of relief. At the end of the movie, John contacts his superiors at the control tower to let them know that Charles has been defeated, sparking great joy from them. In the closing scene, the plane safely lands and all of the passengers are escorted away. John, exhausted from the events, decides to avoid the media and walks away hand in hand with Martha, his new girlfriend. Meanwhile, Sly steps forward to talk to the reporters, and with pride, declares that he was in charge of the entire operation.
Watch next and see how the government uses the brain of a real soldier to create an army of AI combat soldiers for use in battle. Please subscribe and turn on notifications to see more videos like this. Thanks for watching.